All right, we're live. Namaskar. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. So today's video is going to be, I don't know how to say it. This is going to be a response or a dissection to a discussion that was recently hosted by Armin Nawabi and Ali Rizvi, where they had invited a gentleman. I don't remember his name, something Zubin or something, and it was titled India, Religion or something. Let me see the title. I mean, that's how good I am. It was India, Religion and Nationalism. Yeah. So I watched the podcast and I watched it twice. I went through it, made a lot of notes, and I was like, this needs a response because they said, in the beginning of the podcast, Armin says, people say, oh, we always bash Christianity and Islam. We need to bash Hinduism. And I was excited, all of you know, I'm a Nastika. I don't buy into any of the divine claims of Dharma. So I was like, good, let's see what these guys say about Hinduism. I'll also maybe learn a new thing or two. And I heard it and I was waiting and I was waiting and I was waiting. I was like, they'll explain some basics about Hinduism, how Hinduism is structured, etc., etc. And nothing happened. And then I was like, this needs a response. I usually don't do response videos. If you go through my channel, you'll hardly find any video where I'm doing a response to somebody else. I'm least bothered about that. But I thought this has to be done. A, because people need to know what Hinduism is and what are the problems in Hinduism. And then I was like, okay, I'll do it alone. But then I was like, that's not fair because, Hinduism being structured the way it is. So I was like, okay. So I requested Sham to come along and join with me. So today's conversation is not going to be in an interview style. It's going to be me and Sham just freewheeling, and Sham has a lot of notes. I have a lot of notes. So we've not even thought of a structure. So we're just going to talk. Sometimes I apologize in advance if you see us talking over each other sometimes, but we'll try to avoid that. So thanks for coming, Sham.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm actually very, very excited to sink my teeth into it. Thanks to you, I was actually made aware of this thing. And thanks to you, I lost 2 hours that I'll never get back. But but I'm excited to start dissecting this thing.
Yeah, so I want to start, Sham, by my first note was this guy is a Parsi, whosoever was their guest, and not a Hindu background. And this is how good he was. Interesting. Everybody is watching the Cārvāka podcast, and the guy kept on saying Cārvāka, Cārvāka. I mean, you're laughing. I was pulling my hair.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, yaar, nakar, yaar, please don't do it. And I mean, if this is your house expert on Hinduism, the least I expect, the bare minimum I expect from you is at least get your freaking pronunciations right, man. I mean, you live in India, you're not a foreigner. You could at least, Zubin, this is for you. It's called Cārvāka, not Cārvāka. So now that we've gotten over that, I want to address something Ali Rizvi said in the end. Ali justified inviting him, saying, you know what, I did not want to invite a Hindu because I think they would be biased. Now, that bothers me at a very fundamental level. To even gauge whether somebody is biased or not, in my view, let's say whether I want to know a person is biased on the subject of quantum mechanics. Now, let's not do quantum mechanics. Let's say evolution. I need to have some basic understanding about the core of evolution, how we have come from a single cell to a multiple cell to whatever stage we are today. And then I can, take an educated guess as in, I've heard 3-4 sides and, this guy seems to be slightly biased towards a particular type and this guy is not. So Ali's answer was no, because he's not a Hindu and he's an atheist, that makes him an authority of sorts. He's not emotionally involved. I'm sorry that I just don't buy that excuse. Tomorrow, are you going to say that if you are an atheist, then you're emotionally involved in the defense of the stand of atheism? Are you not qualified to defend your atheism? I mean,
it's like saying, oh, we're trying to perform this research on physics, And because we want to make sure we get we get the best perspective on this physics problem, we're going to get this history professor, and he's going to talk about physics, who has no idea what physics is. It's kind of like saying the same thing. Now, at the same time, I want to leave my mind open that, okay, maybe these guys wanted to get a multitude of perspectives. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I'm open to leaving my mind open to that. Maybe in the future, a couple of weeks down the line, they're going to get a Hindu. Maybe they're going to get somebody who's more involved with sort of Hindu civilization and knows more about it. I'm open to that suggestion if they do something like that. But yeah, for the first impression wasn't the best.
No, I think Ali does mention, to be fair to Ali in this one, he says, no, we want to invite a Hindu nationalist or somebody from Hindutva, the Hindutva camp. So I'm going to be fair to Ali on that one. But my premise is, I have a fundamental problem about giving a by default edge to someone that he's unbiased. I know he's unbiased. How do I know? I've read his articles on Huffington Post. He writes on the Atheist Republic. He shits on everything we know which has the tag religion associated with it. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it for me. And I'll tell you why it doesn't cut it for me. Because if this is a podcast on Hinduism and Hindu society, in the entire podcast, and I heard it twice, minute after minute, if you are discussing Hinduism, these are the words that should naturally flow in a discussion. Atman, Shruti, Smriti, Brahman, Punarjanma. You have Yoga, Sadhana, Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Uttar Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa, Jaina, Bodha. Now, you don't hear these words even once in the entire discussion on Hinduism. Then I don't know what kind of an expert that person is. And I want to clarify this. I like Armin Nawabi. I like Ali Rizvi. I would not even have bothered to respond to this if I did not like them. If anything, I was disappointed. Especially Armin, I don't care. Armin doesn't know anything about India. He's from Iran. In fact, if anything, Armin came off as the guy who was genuinely curious, that he was asking questions. He tried to understand a few things. But Ali, come on, give me a break. Ali, no matter how much he stayed in Canada or in Saudi Arabia before that, I've read Ali's articles. I've read his book. I've read a lot of material Ali has produced. I was expecting Ali to ask the most pertinent questions, and I was disappointed with Ali more than Armin. Armin was
exactly, and this is a guy that says, and we were talking about this before we went live. This is a guy that says that he refers to him as an Indian Pakistani because both of his parents are from India, and his father is from now Prayagraj, so. So yeah, basically his parents are from India, and he says that I call myself an Indian Pakistani. It bothers a lot of people. If you call yourself an Indian Pakistani, then you have to know more about India than you know now. If you're coming out, having people on to discuss about India, Hinduism, and nationalism and stuff like that, you need to know a little bit more if you want to claim that Indian Pakistani tag. Yeah, that was disappointing. And I want to just echo really quickly what you said about Armin as well, that, listening to the whole podcast, I had the least complaints with Armin because Armin came off as a guy who genuinely, number one, wanted to know and was asking the most thought-provoking questions and was asking the most interesting questions by far, by a country mile.
Now, I want to start by stating the points where I agreed with Zubin, because I'm not going to shit on the whole discussion, because I think Zubin made some brilliant points too. I'm going to be the first one to admit to that. I know Zubin was, I don't know, for some odd reason, to my first speak to him, and he thought I was hostile to him and he was hostile to me, but I'm usually the most civil guy on Twitter, as long as you're civil to me. So it was kind of, it kind of turned me off. And then, in fact, I wanted to invite him, but now I'm not going to invite him because, you're going to use ad hominem to me. What's the point? I'm a bloody skeptic myself. So you're kind of in the same camp with me, which was kind of funny. But anyways, so let's first discuss, in my view, what I think Zubin accurately stated are tangible Hindu problems, which I believe are at a scriptural level too. Yeah, Hindus can use the mental gymnastics and reject them. But having said that, there's still problems. And I think first, let's do the part where we agree. So I'm going to start with Zubin, where he says caste is a major problem in India, it is deeply entrenched in our culture, and we we are not dealing with in a proper way. So I'm going to give my response to that, because this is pretty much what came off. I think in a 2 hour discussion, 1.5 hour was untouchability, caste, untouchably caste, Hindutva, everybody is a terrorist, anybody
Yeah.
associated with the word Hindutva is a terrorist. So we'll deal with the Hindutva and the political aspect of India part later. But the one core aspect, which was Jativad. I mean, I was disappointed he did not even use the word Jativad. At least Varna once, where I was like, okay, thank goodness he used the word Varna once at least. I was like, small mercies. But let's talk about Jativad. And recently, if you guys want to see me and Sham shit on Jativad, I mean, you should see Sham's recent podcast with me, where I went for the jugular literally on that. So first things first, I admit India has a problem of caste. We have had a problem, and if you look at genetic research in India, I think last year in the Indian newspaper DNA, and whosoever is watching me, guys, if you can Google the article, check out that article for me, where around 2,000 years ago, Indians stopped, breeding, amongst each other, and they were, kind of isolated, and they got stuck within their own caste. I think this is a very tangible proof of Jativad, ossifying, all the jatis being insular, the starting of the starting of the process of this hardlining of Jativad in India is there. So there is tangible genetic evidence of that. Nobody can deny it. Science categorically states that. So that is the one major thing that I agree with. I agree with Zubin on, major thing, and we should accept where we have messed up as a society.
Yes.
So Sham, what do you think about that?
I completely 100% agree. And I agreed with Zubin completely on that. The points that he made with regards to the Jativad, with regards to the casteism that exists in Indian society, I completely agree with him on that. It's a serious problem. We see it. I wouldn't say in our day-to-day lives every day, but we see it often enough for it to be a very, very serious problem. That is something that we as a civilization, that we as a country need to seriously look at, and we need to seriously address, which we've done a half decent job of it, but not decent enough so far.
Yeah, I agree. It's not. I like I said it in your podcast. I think if the journey to Jativad, elimination of Jativad, is 100 kilometers, I think as a society we are at 60 kilometers. We have 40 kilometers to go, which is a long distance away.
Long way.
And if it is 40 kilometers away, that means we still have a major problem. And I want to add to that. They made a passing reference to the Manusmriti. I think when it comes to Jativad, it's not the scriptural answer is not so simple, because if you're going to talk about Manusmriti, then why aren't you going to talk about all the smritis in the Hindu pantheon? And this is where I was disappointed. It was like the guy does not know anything about Hindu philosophy. He's like, Manusmriti is the common word that is dropped every time in every freaking discussion on Hinduism. It's like, oh, Manusmriti. I was like, why not Yajnavalkya Smriti?
Yeah.
What about the Parshahara Smriti? What about the Narada Smriti? What about the Smriti by Medhatithi? Or the entire pantheon of the Dharma Shastras? I mean, you are apparently an expert on Hinduism. You've read all the 10,000 freaking pages of all the Dharma Shastras. And man, I could not read all of them. I don't know. But here's the thing. As a Hindu, I'm saying it openly. I identify as a Hindu. I reject every single Smriti. It's allowed. Now what? And he's like, no, you're an apologist. I'm not an apologist. Just because the Quran and the Bible are structured in a way where you either take them or you leave them. And if you leave them, we'll kill you, does not mean I, as a Hindu, have to deal with that problem. Why are you forcing your problems on me? So, Sham, what do you have to talk about on this? Because I know you had made some notes on this topic too.
About the caste stuff, or about what he basically was saying about
No,
it?
not about the caste, about his, basically not stating a single verse, and not even talking about any scriptural level. It's like, I'll give you another example. Bhagavad Gita, I think it was chapter number 4, verse number 13. Chaturvarnam Maya system. What is that? Gunakarma Vibhagascha.
Right, right.
If you're talking about scriptures and caste, well, Bhagavad Gita is probably a far more prevalent Hindu scripture in India.
Yes.
It says caste is not by birth, And caste is basically on the basis of your it's a classification on what you do, and eventually your varna will be decided by your gunas and karmas.
Yes.
So how do you so it's there. I'm not saying Manusmriti does not have bad verses, but my point is, if you were to go, everybody who's going to watch this, come on, does any of you have the Manusmriti in their house?
Exactly. That's a big point. That's a very big point, because we people keep using the Manusmriti to bash people, but I wonder how many households can you go to today in India where you're going to see that in their puja room they have the Manusmriti kept next to the idols of the devtas. How many houses? If you can find me five, I'll give you 500 rupees. You know, like it's a crazy thing. I'm not saying, now again, people are going to be like, you're apologizing for casteism. I'm not apologizing for casteism. We started off the discussion by saying it's a serious issue, but what I'm saying is you're using this one text to, characterize the entire Hinduism with, and you're kind of trying to do that Abrahamic, playing that Abrahamic mind game that this text characterizes your entire civilization. That's just not true with India. It's just not true. That's not the case with India at all.
Yeah, so now let us go through one by one. I'm going to talk about his claim. So
I
somewhere,
actually want to, before we do that, we should actually go over a couple of other things that
sure.
maybe he said that we agree with. I want to give him credit for bringing up the issue of women, because that's an issue. That's an issue, especially when he was talking about the Me Too stuff and how these in Hindu civilization women are worshipped, and there's no way that women can be mistreated in Indian civilization. That's bogus and it's bollocks, and it's happening. It happens in India. There are horror stories from these so-called practicing Hindus, the way they treat women in certain Hindu households as well. It's a real thing. But when it comes to Me Too, he was trying to paint it as a situation that Me Too and sexual harassment of women is a direct result in India of Hinduism, whereas harassment against women is occurring across the board, whether you like it or not. Whether you're a Christian man or a Muslim man or a Hindu man, you're harassing women. So by trying to paint a picture to people that do not know that much about India, that the reason women are harassed in India is because of Hinduism, that's very disingenuous in my view.
Yeah, but I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
actually interesting. No, we do have a problem of treating women in India, and again, I
Yes.
think I agree with Zubin that the mistreatment, ill treatment of women is also justified scripturally. I mean, I can cite a lot of scriptures, and a lot of smritis have given women a raw deal, but it's complicated. Like in India, yes, there are women gods too, but come on, give me a freaking break. There, you
Yeah.
can easily point out to scriptures that women are, let's assume the crimes, the punishments for the same crime. Are they the same for a man and a woman? You can find scriptures where you'll see those differences. Uh, if you are going to give an apologetic answer, you can say, yeah, they're not as bad as Islam and Christianity. It doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, it's like I'm
Yeah.
giving you a slap instead of a punch. Well, you're still slapping me, right? So,
Yeah.
like all religions and all societies, women have been given a raw deal everywhere. India is no exception, in my view. India has given women a raw deal. And in fact, I'm a supporter of the Me Too campaign. I believe we have a long way to go when it comes to these things in India. And this is what disappoints me. Zubin can find allies in the non-left, in you and I. He can
Yeah.
actually,
In somebody like even me. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree with him.
And the way he shitted on everyone. I mean, he reminded me of Amitabh Bachchan's angry young, angry young man. He's like that angry atheist who's pissed off at everything. I was so disappointed. I was like, dude, why are you so angry? I mean, he could actually reach out, and in fact, I do that. In I'm a political animal. I'm involved in politics in India, and I always make sure that I reach out to people in the left wing. I was like, come on, man, let's work together. We have problems in our society. You agree, I agree. Caste is a problem. Mistreatment of women is a problem in India. Yes, untouchability of some sort is still practiced in India. I mean, if
Yep.
again, just go back to Sham's podcast where I mentioned, even in urban centers, even today, the maids, the home, the servants at home, we have separate utensils, and all these things do happen. It may not happen in my house or in Sham's house. It does not mean it does not happen
Does
in
not
India.
happen.
It happens. It's rampant in India, and we can fucking lie to ourselves all the time. But these are all problems in India, all problems in India, and I'll be the first one to admit it. Sham's gonna admit it. Now, what I had a problem with was Zubin tried to paint it in a way that these Hindutva people. First,
Yep.
I don't call myself a Hindutva guy. I just say I'm a non-left guy. But all Hindutva people. I mean, I've hung out with a lot of Hindutva people. They're nice people. A lot of them are really basic, decent human beings who just want India to be a nice place. I mean, and then to use one WhatsApp forward to say, look, I mean, really? I mean, is this the level of research are we going to talk about? Do you know these Hindutva people? They are very
Yeah.
active on WhatsApp. Give me a freaking break, man. I have Congress voters in my family. It's hilarious. They will share the Congress WhatsApp forwards. We will share the BJP WhatsApp forwards, and we just laugh at each other. It's basically a WhatsApp forward match. I mean,
It's basically like saying, if let's say I'm an Indian, you're an Indian, and if you went to an American YouTube show and you read the YouTube comments and you said, well, that's America. That's what Americans are like. Every single American's an asshole, and every single American's a, redneck, mouth breathing idiot. So if that's your measure for how to look at a civilization and how to look at a country and its people, then it's an incredibly stupid measure.
yeah, the next time, there's going to be a serious survey in India, they're going to take WhatsApp surveys.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. The third thing I was going to say as well is that one more thing that I am slightly in agreement with Zubin as well is when he said when he was talking about how there's this weird complex among Indians that every scientific discovery that was made in the West is actually an Indian scientific discovery. And a lot of people have that weird inferiority mixed with superiority complex in India. And to an extent, that is true. To an extent, to say that India invented Wi-Fi, India invented genetic engineering, and India invented DNA and all that stuff, it's stupid. But at the same time, it is also a symptom of people, leftist Western scholars, and then after that, left-based scholars, completely ignoring India's achievements in science and technology. I think it's a symptom of that a little bit as well. There are two sides to this story, and unfortunately, Zubin only mentioned one side to the story, which I think the other side of the story is important, because one side of the story doesn't complete the story.
No, but that honestly is a real problem. Look, I'll tell you. I mean, it bothers me so much. So I don't know with who I was having. Oh yeah, my last live discussion was with Abhijit Chawda. So okay, the irony was somebody in the live audience. I laugh even when I think about it now. They mentioned Shushrut and Ganesh in the same line. And I was like, oh God, what do I do with these people? And it's so annoying. And Haris Sultan can vouch for this. Haris once asked me, what do you think is a typical Hindu trait? I was like, I can tell you, Hindus think they are more scientific than the scientists.
Yeah.
And we are the most scientific. Everything is scientific. But the problem is, the moment science starts disagreeing with their cherished Hindu beliefs, oh my God, science is bad. Look at science, changes every 20 years. We don't like it. Look at religion, never changes. It is the truth forever. I mean, that's just
which is weird because that's what Hindus do. I mean, that's what Hinduism does. It evolves and it changes as well throughout time. It tries to evolve, at least. I know some of the central concepts don't, but it's there's space there for disagreement. There's space there for evolution, and I don't know why Hindus have to be like, okay, if there's some scientific evidence that negates some of the stuff that they necessarily believe, it doesn't have to be a world ender, because that's not what ends Hinduism. This kind of rigidity is what's going to end Hinduism.
And you know what? I use Ghalib's couplet. I'm not going to repeat it over here. You can go to my previous podcast with Abhijit Chawda where I made this point. Ghalib uses a nice couplet. I mean, Shairi Ghalib ki thi. And Ghalib says something which is very profound and sounds exactly like quantum mechanics. So are you going to say Mirza Ghalib was a scientist? No, he was not. He was a shire. He wrote a nice couplet which happened to agree with quantum mechanics. Just like that, a lot of Hindu scriptures will say a lot of profound philosophical things that just happen to fall in place, which science as a method verifies. It's okay. It's fine. And take the good stuff, reject the bad stuff, and be happy in life. But to say your religion is scientific, I'm sorry, it's just bullshit, and I don't buy it. Now, another aspect where I think we could find a common ground with Zubin was on his explanation of Islam and his criticism, or the lack of criticism of Islam amongst the liberals in India.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I
Open-minded.
agree.
I consider myself to be a liberal. I know you're a liberal. I know we don't use the tag liberal because it's so sullied these days online. But come on, we are open-minded guys. We are for
Yeah.
freedom. We are hated amongst the Hindus, both of us, because we are absolutists when it comes to free speech. I mean, you've been abused. I've been abused on that on live YouTube chats. So it's not a big deal. But he was accurate when he said Muslims don't criticize Islam in India, but
Mm.
where he stopped, and which is where I want to add, is because they're scared.
Yep.
Why would you avoid that part, Zubin? Say it. Say it as it
It's
is.
true.
I can say Ram is a lousy husband. Nothing happens. I can say Vivekananda and Ramakrishna Paramahansa had sexual relations. I will not be hounded. But the moment I say something about some prophet of one religion, there's going to be an army. And you see how
Outside your house.
I
Yeah.
immediately changed my words because I freaking live in India
Mm.
and I did not have to change my words in Hinduism.
Yeah.
And this is the problem in India. And why won't he admit? Just admit it, right? They will behead you. They will
Yeah.
behead you. I don't want to take names. A few days ago, a blogger from some country messaged me, and I'm not going to share his identity. I'm not going to share the country. The person is in India. They have run away from that country. The person asked me to help him. And I was so helpless because I was like, dude, even if I make you stay in India and you criticize the great religion, they will kill you in India too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few Muslims in India too. So yeah, it's a crazy one. It's facts presented or certain topics presented in a way that is very designed very well to suit a certain viewpoint. It's unfortunately what's happening is when people critique India or when people look at the political or cultural situation in India, they take the sort of Western or what's happening in America, they take that framework and apply it like by like to India. That's what they do. They say, okay, in Western countries or in US, Trump is a fascist, so obviously Modi is a fascist. And that's he mentioned that Modi is a right wing extremist or something like that. He said today right wing extremists are in power like Modi. And if you actually look at the way Modi government has worked, I think a lot of right wing extremists would be very disappointed with him because he's actually been a lot more of a communist in terms of what the policies that he's implemented. He's a bigger leftist than people give him credit for. Just look at the policies that he's bloody implemented. The guy's policies are completely to the left, more or less. So to talk about that stuff, and people that do not know about India, people that do not know about the political situation in India, will have no option but to listen to Zubin and think that okay, so Trump and Modi are exactly the same person.
Yeah, if Trump and Modi are the same, at times I believe at the policy level, how I wish Modi was like Trump.
Exactly, right? We have
And
a commie prime minister.
yeah, it's just I was like, God damn, Modi is so left. He in India, for goodness sakes, India does not have a right wing. All India has is different shades of the freaking left. And this whole thing. Now let's touch upon a few points. I want to start with the cow lynching aspect and
Hmm.
and the BJP obsession with the cow. right?
Mm.
So the guy says BJP is the right-wing fascist political outfit in India. There is cow lynching happening, and BJP is supporting these cow people, right?
And
Cow
Adityanath is a terrorist, also to remember.
terrorist. And Yogi Adityanath is a terrorist who is a chief minister of a state in India. These
Mm.
were his words. Yogi Adityanath.
This is an important word to remember. This terrorist is an important word to use for an elected leader.
Yeah. So a chief minister of India is a terrorist, by the way. I don't know how many people he has terrorized, but and for the record, I'm not a fan of Yogi Adityanath. So you're talking to someone who actually had written a huge Facebook post when Yogi Adityanath became the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, and I said I'm disappointed BJP has elected him. For the record, I'm a BJP voter. I don't hide my political preferences either. So, anyways, let's go on to the whole cow mamla. Now, Madhya Pradesh is going to have an election. Kamal Nath is one of the most senior politicians in India, in the Congress, at the central level, not just at the state level. What was the Congress saying in this election? We are going to open 12,000 cow shelters. Because obviously, Congress is not obsessed with the cow, right? And what was the criticism of the Congress party, which Zubin loves a lot? He was going gaga about Pandit
Nehruvian
Nehru,
socialism, yeah.
Nehruvian socialism. Give me a fucking break. Here is your Congress party talking about cow protection. Why don't you get one thing? Hindus have a thing for the cow. Congress, at the end of the day, cannot win an election if some Hindus don't vote for them. Congress is also going to do that. Why does Rahul Gandhi suddenly become a Janayudhari? For people who don't know what the Janayudhari is, basically Brahmin Hindus wear this white thread, and it's called the Janayu. And there was the Congress spokesperson, Ranjit Surjewala, on national television saying Rahul Gandhi is a Janayudhari Hindu.
He was also doing the Mansarovar Yatra recently.
Yeah.
And that is the leader of the secular party.
Yeah, give me a break. Indian politics is as shitty as it gets. I mean, as a mature voter, I don't know whom to vote for. I just end up voting for BJP because I'm sorry, when the Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, in 2006, in an open address says Muslims have first rights on everything in India. And if you don't believe it, just Google it. Google Muslims have first rights in India. Dr. Manmohan Singh, Times of India, which is a proper mainstream newspaper in India. It is not pro-BJP. It is, if anything, it is more left-leaning than anything. And here is Dr. Manmohan Singh saying, Muslims have first rights. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Then what about the Christians? What about the Sikhs? What about the Jains? What about the Buddhists? They don't have first rights on everything in India. What is so special about Muslims? I have nothing against Muslims. I've got Muslims in my family. So why would we, give a false image of Indian politics to international audiences? My last note on this, on the damn discussion was point number 82, left-wing circle jerk.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was a left-wing circle jerk, what they were doing. It was basically people who agree with each other on everything.
Yes.
And they just shit on everything and they think they have the truth. Well, I'm sorry. India is more complicated than that. So I don't know. What were your comments on this, on his views on the whole cow thing?
On cow thing, the same thing, very similar to what you said. Like, is violence surrounding the cow an issue? Yes. Is that something that needs to be looked at from a law and order standpoint? 100% yes. Is there a law and order problem in India? 100% yes, there's a problem in India. Do political parties play games on the cow? Yes. Is the BJP the only party that does it? Absolutely bloody not. Absolutely bloody not. And if you're trying to say that BJP is the only party that plays cow and that talks about the cow, then again, like we were just talking about it, look at what Rahul Gandhi has been up to. Look at what some of the senior leaders within the Congress party have been up to. They said that to Zubin's credit, when he was talking about Article 295A, he did say that it was created basically to appease the Muslims. But he then alluded to the fact that Hindus are using it and only Hindus use it as a tool, and the BJP is using it as a tool. It's not just the BJP. Again, 295A is a problem. We have spoken about it at length before, so I don't want to go too much into it, but it's a problem. But is it a problem exclusively to the BJP? No, it is not. The chief minister of Punjab, who is from the Congress, one of the more powerful chief ministers in the Congress party, he is trying to pass a blasphemy law, something very similar to a blasphemy law, which is essentially in effect a blasphemy law. So this is not a problem that is exclusive to the Hindutvavadis. It is not. It is a pan-Indian problem, and it is a problem that we need both people on the so-called non-left and the left. We need both people to come together to solve that problem. This kind of just sitting around and shitting on the Hindutvavadis, that is, Hindutvavadis are basically these knuckle-dragging animals and we can't expect anything from them. That attitude is not going to solve any problem. So if you think that shitting on people is going to solve your problems, then good bloody luck.
Yeah, and this is my problem, that if you want to have an honest discussion about Indian politics and India, and if it has to be intellectual. I mean, I'm not talking about some weird program where people shit on each other and it's just it solves no purpose. You're not going to learn anything in the end from that, and this is what bothers me. Let alone that cow slaughter laws. Is this guy going to tell the entire audiences that are going to watch that we have what 29 states plus union territories in India, or 31 states, 30 states? कितनी हुई है भाई, मेरे को बताओ, अभी रोज नई स्टेट बनती है, मैं नंबर भी भूल गया हूं अभी. So most of the cow slaughter laws have been brought about by Congress governments in the past. The BJP has just made them, in some cases, maybe slightly draconian in the terms of the punishment, and I don't support it. What the hell? I don't support this bullshit happening in India. And about the cow lynching, I admit there have been cow lynchings, but then
Yes.
what bothers me is, while there is cow lynching, there are also murders from the Muslim side where there is cattle theft. And they kill Hindus, and
There's smuggling,
so weak in India that these poor villagers. There was a brilliant ground report on Swarajya.
I saw it.
I'll try to put the link in the live chat. If people want to read it, you guys can read it too. It was a freaking brilliant ground report on what is the reality in the heartland, hinterland of India. Cows get stolen, and if you're a poor Indian, the cow is everything for you. I mean, you lose everything. I work in 2 villages all the time. I know what the cow means to those people. You don't know anything, and you just share one side of the story. If you are a really unbiased person, which Ali thinks he was, he would have spoken about the cattle theft too. That cattle is a multipolar problem in India. It's not a unipolar problem. It's not a single track where
and people also forget how important of a resource it still is in India, especially to the most impoverished people that live in villages. I'm from Bihar, and my ancestral village, you can see that people of very poor family is going to have 1 or 2 cows, and those 2 cows are so important to their subsistence. So it provides food, it provides money, it provides all kinds of stuff to that impoverished family that has nothing else but the cow. Imagine losing those 2 cows. You're screwed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now let us point to a very interesting point. I found it very childish, but I have to talk about it. So the guy, somewhere around, I think it was the minute 5 or minute 7, he says, Hindutva trolls are the most coordinated and the most vicious trolls. That was very interesting. And then I think it was Ali or Armin. I think Armin pushed back. He was like, hang on, Muslims go after me all the time. He was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Everybody goes after each other on social media, which is
and then the guy said that no, you have no idea about Hindutva trolls. I mean, you think Muslim trolls are bad. You should look at Hindutva trolls. And I'm like, you serious, buddy?
And something interesting, he made a categorical claim that Hindutva trolls send more rape threats and death threats than Muslims. First of all, I mean, if you were an atheist, the first thing that goes into your head, that's how I think. Survey, actual data, let's move our emotions aside and look at the data. He doesn't cite any survey, any data, nothing. It is just, if anything, it was emotions. It was a verbal, emotional statement, which was like, oh no, Hindutva trolls are the worst. Dude, you're an Indian. The probabilities of you being followed by Indians are higher. So naturally, when people troll you on Twitter, they're going to be, India being 80% Hindu, they're going to be Hindus. And in that, a significant chunk will be people who are politically opposed to you. So for goodness sakes, Don't do this. Don't be so obviously illogical is my whole point. And I don't want to use these words, and I don't use this pejoratively, but I have to say this. Give me a freaking break.
The
Everybody
other
gets trolled on Twitter. I get
Yeah, another thing also important to remember is that I understand and I accept that there is a problem of abuse and threats on social media. I accept that. But what is happening in the United States over the past couple of years is something that, again, the sort of leftists in India are using that same framework. What Hillary Clinton started doing, I remember during her campaign, was that whenever she would get trolled, again, trolled, not abused, trolled, when these leftist sort of people started getting trolled or memed on social media, they would call it racism, they would call it sexism, they would call it misogyny, they would call it abuse, and they would call it threats. So it is important to make that distinction as well. Memeing somebody is not the same thing as threatening or abusing somebody. It's a meme. It's important to point out that this distinction as well because it exists.
Yeah, it's very true. So now I'm going to go to the next topic where he mentions Dabholkar and Pansare. I agree, Dabholkar and Pansare were murdered by some extreme Hindu elements. I got no problem in admitting to that. And let's see, the case is on. Let's see what happens with
Mm.
the case. And my stand on any kind of extremist is very clear. Could be a Hindu extremist, Muslim extremist, Christian extremist, or an atheist extremist. The state, with all its might, should go after you and fix you in whichever ways the law allows. That's my take on it. I don't give a shit.
Yep.
But he made a statement, which is a very common statement every left winger makes. He says Gandhi was murdered by Godse. Godse is RSS. RSS is a militant organization. So I don't want to say anything. You go for it.
No, I want you to take it because I want to bring up another point quickly before I finish off. I want to talk about the previous point really quickly because he was also saying that, and you briefly mentioned it, but I want to just mention it so people know the gravity of what he was actually saying. He was saying that by and large, basically, Hindutva trolls offer a much greater threat to life to people, and that Muslims are not nearly as vicious in India. And he categorically came out and said that. So this is important to point out. Any half rational person knows the truth of this matter. If you are out here saying that Hindutva trolls offer the greatest threat to life, and they're not as vicious as Muslim trolls, then you're either a complete buffoon or you're just lying. That's important. That's important to point out. I'll let you take that question because I want to talk about something next really quick as well. So I wanna just get your thoughts on that.
So it's a very simple test.
Yeah.
This is about the point you've raised. I stay right outside a temple. The pujari knows I'm a Cārvāka. If I go in the temple, the pujari literally knows that I don't believe in his beliefs. I have never been murdered. Funny enough, I get welcomed inside the temple. They find me very funny in some ways. They want to debate with me. They're very keen. Now, here's a thought experiment. Let us try to do that. I'm an atheist. Let us try to criticize Islam in a very civil way. Let us not abuse. I am not for atheists abusing, although they have their right to do that within free
Yes.
laws. But I would not do it. Let us try that in a mosque in India. Let's see what happens. So, I mean, really, you want to try that? I mean,
Yeah. They were also talking about Zubin also said right after that. I remember because I marked these all together. Right after that, he said Hindutva. There's never been a there's never been an Indian identity. There's basically an identity that was created after the British came, and now the Hindutwas are saying that actually India is a thing, and there's a pan-Indian identity and stuff like that. And again, that's not entirely true as well, because there's always been the desire for a Chakravarti. There's always been a desire to unite India politically as well, and there's always been a cultural feeling between the people that exist between the Himalayas and the sea. There's always been a cultural feeling between them. There's geographically and politically, yeah, sure, India might have been divided, but to say that there's never been a Hindu identity is it. again, that's untrue as well, because and these are very small things, but they matter when you're talking to an audience that has no clue what India is.
I think he did make a passing comment of the United Hindu identity starting from the Middle Ages. But let me first take this thing about Gandhi being murdered by Godse, Godse being RSS, and
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, being a militant organization. No, as far as I know, whatever little research I have done, Godse was Hindu Mahasabha. Yes, he had joined RSS, and then he was dissatisfied that RSS was not violent enough for him, and he left the RSS and joined the Hindu Mahasabha. And when he murdered Gandhi, he was a member of the Hindu Mahasabha. The government at that time, the government of India, banned the RSS. The RSS fought against it, and eventually the ban was lifted. Now, if the RSS was a terrorist organization, why did Nehru's government, Nehru, who was the great secularist, the greatest leader, the divine leader, the master, the ruler of India, why did he remove the ban and then invites the same terrorist organization, these goddamn terrorists of RSS, to a Republic Day parade in India?
Yeah, that's that same terrorist organization. Their chief is given an interview where he's saying that there is no Hindutva without Muslims. If anybody wants to create a Hindu nation without Muslims in it, I don't want to be part of that nation. So, I mean, this horrible terrorist organization, and the right wingers will be very disappointed.
Yeah, and here's the funny part. See, I'm going to admit that Golwalkar made some very nasty, bigoted comments. I concede to that. But Mohan Bhagwat's recent 3-day speech was very important tipping point in Indian politics, where Mohan Bhagwat said, our leaders or our pracharaks from the past, whatever they said, we can take what we agree, we will reject what we disagree with. And he used a very key word: Hinduism is evolving. So Hindutva will go on evolving. We don't need to agree with everything our past leaders have said, and that's a very vital point. Now,
It's a big point.
why did Zubin not mention such an important word? I mean, there were like major op-eds in all major newspapers in India.
Even newspapers like the bloody Hindu had to come out and say that, okay, well, we had to sit up and take notice of that bloody speech.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that this is such a major political event in India where this happens and the guy does not even mention it. But hey, he's the expert on Hinduism and Hindu philosophy and Hindutva in India, right?
And he's painting at the same time, while he's doing that, he's painting a doomsday scenario where he's saying that things are getting progressively, markedly worse. This is the scenario that this guy is painting. So while he's painting that scenario that things are getting markedly worse and doomsday is approaching, at the same time, Mohan Bhagwat is giving a speech where he's saying that, there is no Hindutva without Muslims. There is no Hindutva without the non-Hindus in India. We cannot have, and again, like you said yourself, Hindutva is evolving. We need to evolve as a culture and as an ideology. Makes no mention of that, but says that doomsday is coming. So there's this weird dissonance there too.
And also, for the record, I don't call myself Hindutvawadi. I have many problems, especially on the economic front, the economic policies of RSS. All that pseudo socialism proposed by RSS in the form of integral humanism, Ekatma Manavad, what they call it, Ekatma Manavad. I don't agree with it. I believe India needs free markets. India needs good old free markets. Then only India will progress as a country. So I'm sorry, I don't even agree with the Hindutva camp. But it's so annoying to me personally that here I am stating the facts. I just have to correct because the guy was just talking nonsense about the organization, because it's a very simple thought experiment. RSS is probably the largest social organization in the world. How many active volunteers do we have? 50 lakh hai? Around that, I think 5 million active volunteers in the RSS, and then you have so many offshoots of the RSS. If there were so many active terrorists in India, do you think the number of Muslims, as far as the demography is concerned, would go on increasing? I mean, are you telling me that India has an active terrorist organization, active terrorist chief minister, active terrorist prime minister, and still the Muslim population just goes on increasing, goes on increasing. And the fun part is there are more riots in Indian history under the Congress,
Yep, 100%.
Hindu Muslim, where Muslims were massacred, than under the BJP. And nobody talks about those massacres. Nobody talks about Nelly, right? Nelly massacre. Nobody wants to talk about it. Obviously.
Bhagalpur.
Bhagalpur.
Bhagalpur, from my home state. I remember my dad lived in Bhagalpur when that happened. He told me firsthand what happened there. Congress rule. So nobody remembers Bhagalpur. Only I remember because my father lived through it. So that's the kind of thing. Everybody and their bloody dog remembers Gujarat. But how many people remember Bhagalpur? Nobody remembers Bhagalpur.
Yeah, it's a problem. Now I want to go on to which I think is the main discussion. His idea of Hindutva was very interesting, and this is a very Marxist take on the world, and which I find very interesting. So somebody, Nimish had sent me a DM about it too, so I'm going to connect his DM too. So when it comes to criticizing Islam, their critique of Islam is very different and comes from a very different worldview. But when it comes to India, the academic work on India is a very Marxist worldview. Like all the scholars, they're hardcore Marxists. You'll not find normal left-leaning scholars in India. You will find Marxists in India. Now, he made a very interesting analogy. He said Hindutva is not really Savarkar per se or Hegdewar. Hindutva starts with Swami Dayanand Saraswati,
Yep.
Swami Vivekanand, and Sri Aurobindo. Now, out of the three of them, I am partially conceding Aurobindo was a political animal. Because Hindutva is a strictly political movement. It is not anything else. Hindutva is a socio-political reaction to the realities of India. Whatever, we can debate whether it's valid or not. I have no problems because I think it's not valid on many fronts. But to say Swami Dayanand Saraswati and Swami Vivekananda are political animals is just bullshit. I have disagreements with the divine claims of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. I have disagreements with Swami Vivekananda's worldview. I have read all the volumes and speeches of Swami Vivekananda, his entire collective works, and I have read a lot of material like the Satyarth Prakash of Swami Dayanand Saraswati and some other work of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. They were just Hindus. They were Hindu scholars. They were talking Hinduism. And what do you expect from a religious guru? If he is going to rediscover his identity or his, he's going to unite his people, he's naturally going to use the language he's most familiar with. That is Hinduism. To basically say whatever Hinduism is what Hindutva is. There is nothing else is garbage. It's unscholarly, and it shows how ridiculously unread you are. And then he drops in the name, and I the moment he started talking this, I was like, Jyotirmoy Sharma ki baat kar raha hai. I was like, I'm waiting for Jyotirmoy Sharma's name to come. And Jyotirmoy Sharma is your typical rabid left-leaning scholar who has basically done his usual deconstructionism and has made these claims that have no freaking reality. And don't believe me, here's the thing. You have a lot of Congress voters in India. Just go to them and say, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Sri Aurobindo, and Swami Vivekananda are Hindutva. And see the fun. Don't go to a BJP guy. Go to a Congress guy. The looks they will give you and the shit you will get from them, you'll realize what the reality is.
Yep, exactly right. And Ali, I want to talk about quickly what Ali said. There's one thing Ali said, which, again, this might not be within the purview of what you're necessarily interested in, but this is something that really interests me. He started talking about, this Hindu nationalism is such a horrible thing because we have Pakistan's example. Don't become like Pakistan. Follow Nehru's ideal. Nehru was such a fascinating man and such a great man and stuff like that. And I recently saw Shashi Tharoor made a similar argument where he was, it's become popular recently, but he said it a while ago, where he was saying that no good Hindu would ever want, to build their temple on another place of worship's property or something like that. And this is a very old bullshit kind of narrative that, Hindus should just let whatever happens to them happen to them. Don't ever stand up for what you believe in, don't ever stand up and speak up for what's right. It's that weird, what like Nehru said. Nehru said he was such a great leader, but in my opinion, I don't think he was such a great leader. In my opinion, it's weakness of his that is still allowing the Kashmir situation to be as bad as it is, and our relationship with China to be as bad as it is. It's just this weird thing that we've been taught, that Hindus need to be meek, Hindus need to be agreeable to a fault. Don't question things, don't say things, because if you say things, that makes you a bad Hindu. Then you're not a good Hindu anymore. We have been taught for such a long time that assertiveness and saying what you believe in and saying what you want and asking for what you want is such a horrible thing, that it's turned us into this weird, like, meek people. And I really want Hindus to understand this weird narrative that has been taught to us by the Congress. And the same thing that Ali was saying, oh, don't turn into Pakistan. We're not going to turn into Pakistan, mate. Don't worry about that. Most of us are Hindus. There's no danger of us turning into Pakistan, so don't worry about us. What I'm saying is that it's okay to be assertive. It's okay to ask for what you want. It's okay to say what you want. It doesn't make you a bad person to assert yourself and to ask for what you want. That's how everybody should be. It infuriates me no end when somebody talks about, oh, Hindus should not speak up and shit like that. I don't like that stuff at all.
Yeah, no, I have this thing. I firmly believe India is a democracy because India is majority Hindu.
Yep.
There, I said it.
It's true.
And you know what the worst part is in my life is, I have to fight against bigoted Hindus when they generalize all Muslims. And I'm just stuck, in like in Hindi we say, pahad se gira, khai mein atka, kind of a thing. And I'm neither here nor there. I am very open about the fact that for India to remain a democracy, India has to stay Hindu. Because I'm sorry, Islam and democracy, they just don't get along.
It's not working out.
Yeah, it ain't going to work out there.
Yeah.
And I am a fierce supporter of democracy. I'm a BJP voter. In my entire circle of BJP voters, and I'm a freaking active political animal. I have campaigned in 3 active elections in India, for God's sake. I don't need these people who say we should become a dictatorship. Who are these? These are old farts. You meet those uncles in the gardens who are not part of some weird laughing club who'll say, no, beta, India should become a dictatorship. Yeah, they're
laughing club. Oh, that's a real thing.
Come on, you know that.
I know, that's a real thing.
Yeah. So you meet these old, weird uncles in India who say India should become a dictatorship. And I'll give you an example. They say India should become a dictatorship. Then you ask them, okay, what do you think is a dictatorship? And then they'll be saying, law and order will be strict. Everything will happen on time. There will be no corruption. I was like, is this your version of the dictatorship? They'll be like, yes. I was like, do you know what happens in a dictatorship? He's like, what? And then I would be like, you have no rights. You cannot say this. You'll have to follow this trait of this thing.
Every aspect of your life will be decided by the government. Every aspect, sir.
Yeah, and then they say, no, I don't want that dictatorship. I just want laws to be followed. I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? You must have these discussions in your life too.
100%. I get people on my videos. I get people on my videos. I get people on my Facebook posts and stuff like that. They're always saying that, oh, it'll be so great if for 10 years we could just have a dictatorship, sort everything out, and go back to democracy. I'm like, bro, that's not how a dictatorship works. I don't think you know how these things work. It's not like for 5 years we'll run a dictatorship and then dictator goes, acha, mera pet bhar gaya, here you go, take it back. That's not how it works. Look at the Middle East. That's not how dictatorships work, bro.
Yeah. I always tell these people, it's like, if you want to see what a dictatorship is, just look at Pakistan. Hey, you want to become like Pakistan? The best answer for every bloody Indian who uses the D word, the big capital D, dictatorship, just say, uncle, do you want to become like Pakistan? Like, no, beta, we don't like Pakistan. Then, uncle, please shut up.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is. Just don't talk. You're just a frustrated uncle who has nothing to do, just keeps talking about dictatorship. So these are just frustrated people. And sometimes, and I am willing to give the benefit of the doubt of the same level to a Muslim also who gets angry and says, I want to kill everyone. Most won't do that. Most don't even believe that, but they just get frustrated at times. So let's be fair on both sides. So let us just debunk that bullshit. But some things, few factoids that he mentioned, which I think are accurate. He mentioned about the Peshwas being very casteist. I think that's true. That was
That's true.
accurate. He mentioned the Graham Stain murder by Bajrang Dal activists. Absolutely true. Shameful act, should be condemned. Now, I want to touch one more thing. He accused RSS of the weirdest thing. He accused RSS of suppressing lower caste people. Now, his criticism is that no RSS chief other than Raju Bhaiya, if my memory is served correctly, is a non-Brahmin. Fair enough, but I have attended a lot of RSS shakhas and met a lot of RSS people. Out of curiosity, I just wanted to figure out what these people do. And one thing I observed was a lot of lower caste people are actually there in the RSS and are active in the RSS. And RSS has a very unique practice. When they eat, like when they have their breakfast or lunch, whatever, they will all sit on the
Yep.
floor. They'll sit together and everybody serves each other. There is no untouchability practiced in RSS. There is no casteism practiced in RSS. I found this aspect very interesting. And this is the standard thing that is peddled against RSS all the time. And I always tell them, why don't you just go and spend some time with them? I'm not saying there might be individually bigoted casteist
Yes.
people. They could be, but at an organizational level, I have not experienced it with RSS folks that I've met, and I've met a few senior people too in RSS. I won't drop names here because I'm not a name dropper, but I've met enough senior people in the RSS. So that was something which I found very interesting. And one thing, first he mentions the WhatsApp forward, then to basically use his survey. This is his sample survey. He says, I work in the oil rig. The oil rig is the microcosm of India. That
Yeah.
is proof. So whatever he experiences in the oil rig, it's like all the asshole Hindus basically are sitting on the oil rig of India, and he's meeting all of them, and he says, all these people are like this, man. Only we secularists are saving India. We are saving it.
Yeah.
Now, what do you have to say about the oil rigs of India and his sample size there?
I say it's stupid. That's what I have to say. I say it's stupid. It's like me saying that, I went into a public bathroom and I ran into a couple of assholes. That means this entire country is full of assholes. So it's basically like saying the same thing. That I was pissing next to a couple of assholes, which means that America is full of assholes. So it's such a silly thing. And he was also talking about this weird thing that I'm just like, what? Because he's saying, oh, Hindus have this weird persecution complex, which has never happened in India's history. Hindus always talk about some kind of a Hindu Holocaust where apparently a bunch of Hindus were killed. I don't know what they're talking about. Mughals were just as good as all the other Hindu kings. And okay, people get freaked out when people use the word Holocaust to describe what happened to the Hindus, but is it really that far off the mark? And I'm not even saying that, okay, quote the Hindu sources. I'm saying quote the Muslim sources. Quote the sources that quote the biographer of Ghazni, quote the biographer of Babur, quote their own biographies and read from there. Read from there. Read their own accounts. Read the Islamic accounts of what happened in India. I'm not even saying read some biased Hindu account. Read Islamic accounts of what happened in India, and you'll get the picture about how many people were killed, how many people were converted at the tip of the sword. And to say that we have a persecution complex, that we're imagining stuff that happened to our ancestors a little while ago. Just imagine, because you can say that to Hindus and get away with it. Just imagine if you said that to Native Americans. Bloody these Native Americans, they have this stupid persecution complex. What happened to them? Nothing happened to them. Saalon ko sapna aata rehta chute ho. If you went and said that to Native Americans, what will happen to you in America? You'll be completely discredited in America. But these people are celebrated experts on Hinduism. What kind of nonsense is this? It's absolute nonsense. Again, stuff like this can be corroborated from Muslim accounts. You don't even have to look at Hindu accounts.
Yeah, and one thing which bothered me throughout this, see, whenever Zubin made categorical statements about India, Hindutva, Muslims, treatment of Muslims, he doesn't cite any source or any data.
Yep.
Like
Yes.
I always do this. If everybody who has watched me when I speak, I mean, on my podcast, usually today is the rare day I'm speaking more than Sham. Usually it's like, I'm the quiet one. I just ask the question and let the other guy answer, because that's why I clarified today is going to be different. But what I make sure every time is I try to, I'll give a verse from a text to, and I'll always say, Google, this study was done, or this is done. The guy does not do, he's like, his source is WhatsApp and his oil rig. It bothers me. I'm sorry. Anecdotes are not good enough in life. And if you're going by anecdotes, then it's just bullshit. Now I want to touch about a very sensitive issue, Sham. He talks about bigotry towards Muslims in India. In my view, there is definitely some level of bigotry towards Muslims from the Hindu side in
Yes.
India. It is there. We cannot deny it. But why did the guy not mention that there is an equal, if not more, level of bigotry from the Muslims towards Hindus in India?
Yeah.
Why would you not bring that up? I mean, is bigotry a monopoly of Hindus? I mean, I don't know. And if Hindus are so freaking bigoted, they are so bad. Let me tell you, law and order in India is garbage. Just look at the police to citizen ratio in India. If
Yep.
you believe there are huge hordes of bigoted mob lynchers, and it's only the Indian state with all its might that's protecting Muslims in India, you have no idea about India. India, for a developed secular or a developing secular democratic nation, has most pathetic police force. You want to believe me? Just look at the recent video of Uttar Pradesh police going tie tie.
I have seen it.
I mean, it was bullshit. It's only and only because of this weird pacifism within Hindus in India and their acceptance of other. Are there assholes in the Indian society?
Yeah.
Absolutely. He made a comment that, Hindutva trolls blame Muslims today for the plunder that Muslims did in the past. Bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Utter
That's a lie.
bullshit.
That's a lie.
They don't do that. You will find some. And if you say a huge chunk of Hindutva people do that, show me the data, show it to you. Just fucking going on a podcast and generalizing and stereotyping a whole horde of people with no data points, nothing. You have just stereotyped everyone. And I'm sorry if I sound agitated, is because you are basically harming. There are people who support Hindutva, who stay in America, who stay in Canada, who stay in UK. You are basically stereotyping them because Ali and Armin's podcast might be watched by these Westerners,
Yep.
and they might carry this image because just think of this scenario. Modi got a rock star welcome in the Madison Square. It was Madison Square Garden.
Madison Square Garden, yeah.
Now, Manmohan Singh never got it. That means a majority of Hindutva crowd is there amongst the NRIs who, like Modi. Now, are you saying all these people hate Muslims
Yeah.
and they're bad immigrants? I mean, come on,
Exactly.
you are there. You stay outside India. Are you a Muslim hater?
I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about myself here. I'm talking about like generally Indians, like even before me, that live in these Western countries. They are as close to a model immigrant as you can get, and this is me saying it without bias, on by simply looking at the facts. They are some of the most educated ethnic group in these countries. In America at the very least. They are the highest earning ethnic group in America. And follow law and order. You're going to see Chinese gangs in America. You're going to see Korean gangs in America. You're going to see all kinds of gangs in America. You will never see a Hindu gang in America or an Indian gang in America. Why? Because they're still afraid कि मम्मी आके लात मारेंगे अगर कुछ उल्टा सीधा किया यहाँ पे तो. So they are as close to a model immigrant that you can get. And now you have people that are watching this podcast, that are watching these secular atheists, whatever they call, atheist republic. And then they're going to see and they're going to be like, oh, so these are these wolves in sheep's clothing. This is the picture that's being trying to be painted here. That these are not some nice people who just want to live their lives and coexist with everyone else. They are secretly plotting to kill us all. That's the kind of idea that, oh, these uncles, they're so well educated, but deep down, they just want to exterminate all the Muslims. That's the idea here. And that's completely untrue. People may have problems with Muslims, but people do not say, like you said, people do not say that because Babur murdered a bunch of my ancestors, that makes you an asshole. That's not what they say. They say whatever is happening in the Muslim community right now, we have problems with that. They don't make that connection that it is Babur's fault that you are like this. They say, Aaj jo ho raha hai, let's talk about that. There are problematic things that are happening today. And that's completely legitimate to raise those questions.
Yeah, another interesting point that the dude raised was, these Hindus, they use this blasphemy law. While in the beginning he was very fair, he said that, the
Yes.
blasphemy law came in India because of this weird Muslim problem. But something very interesting, and then he completely does an about.
180. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he says, these Hindus use the blasphemy law. It's the irony of my life, because I am probably the most active fighter against 295A, probably on social media in India. I mean, I vehemently, at least in the BJP voters, I go after 295A on a daily basis, probably planning to challenge it in the Supreme Court of India. The BJP voter, I am going to be pro blasphemy law.
Yeah.
I don't fucking get it. In fact, the complaint in the Hindu group is that we don't use that law. These people always use the law. The Muslim, when I say these people, it's the Muslim and Christian groups. They basically use this law and shut down criticism of Islam and Christianity. We, like idiots, allow criticism of Hinduism. Let us use the law now. So Hindus are basically become reactionary now in
Yeah.
that sense. And the guy was like, I mean, are we living in two separate worlds? Give me a freaking break. Now, another aspect. While he was very right of his, treatment of Hindu women, he talks about Sati. He's
Hmm.
like, dude, people were throwing women in the fires. Now,
Like
I
you could walk outside and your bloody next door neighbor is like, hey,
now,
come to my house. I'm throwing my daughter-in-law.
my view on Sati is this: did Sati exist in India? Yes, and I'm going to say something which is going to piss a lot of Hindus off. Sati existed in India even before the Muslims came to India. Yes, it did. And you know how I can prove that? Read this book, Sati by Meenakshi Jain. Probably the most well-researched scholarly book on the issue of Sati. Sati is very complicated. It was there in India. It was not very, it was not widespread in India. And this bullshit that the British removed Sati in India, just give me a fucking break. While he
Yeah.
uses some names, but he says, no, 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 no. These were westernized Indians that
Yeah.
went to the British and said, remove the law. No, 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 no. These were active Indians. They had some Western ideas. Yes, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and Raja Ram Mohan Roy was not the only guy. If you
Yeah.
read the book by Meenakshi Jain, she gives you a horde of names who lobbied against Sati, and they got it removed. So if anything, the credit goes to the Hindu activists of that time, which was Raja Ram Mohan Roy and the multitude of activists along with that. The British don't get any fucking credit for removing Sati in India. They don't.
Exactly.
Don't peddle this bullshit. At least read some scholarly work. If anything,
Yeah.
missionaries were you should read the role of the missionaries in this whole Sati episode in India. That is something my eyes was open to. And yes, Sati was a problem, but it was not at the level these guys present it to be. And
Yeah.
it annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah. And another thing I want to bring up is something that I've seen sort of people on the left and especially the Marxist people do that very, very often. And it doesn't get challenged enough because it is completely untrue. So what they say, they use the same architecture that people use, that they say, oh, why do black people have so many gripes against the whites, and why have black people been why are black people disadvantaged in America? There are some very legitimate reasons from that, but they take that same architecture and apply it to Hindus and Muslims. They say, oh, the relationship between the whites and the blacks in America is the exact same relationship between the Hindus and the Muslims in India. Cannot be bloody further from the truth. The blacks did not invade Europe and massacre millions of people. The blacks did not, enslave thousands of white people under their rule. The blacks did not rule Europe for so many years. The Muslims in India were in very powerful positions for their entire existence in India. They've always been in a position of power. It is not when so I love how the sort of left has just completely flipped it around, saying that, oh, unfortunately, the Muslims have always been disenfranchised, just like the blacks in America. And that comparison blows my mind because literally everybody buys into it. That the white-black system or the white-black relationship is exactly the same as the Hindu-Muslim relationship. Cannot be further from the truth, but nobody challenges it. Everybody buys into it, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, it's basically pseudo profundity. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Just use nice words, drop these nice words. Like I have a T-shirt which says, "You can't dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with bullshit." By the time you figure out it's bullshit, they've passed on to the new bullshit. While you're cleaning up shit before, and they're like, "I got 3 new shit for you," you know, you can't catch up to them, and it's
Yeah.
constant. And I want to talk about this citation loop. How these guys basically say, "We have the truth, you don't." So I am scholar X. I present a thesis. Scholar Y comes, presents a new thesis. What does he use as a source? Scholar X. Then scholar Z comes. What does he use as a source? Scholar X and scholar Y. And everybody is citing each other. There is no real new material. It's basically me regurgitating the same shit using pseudo profundity and presenting it in a new word salad.
Yep.
And it's ad nauseum everywhere in India, everywhere in the world. This is how it is. It's bullshit. And as an active rabid disbeliever, imagine if I have a problem with these guys. How irritating this must be. I feel so lost at times. I can't freaking get any Hindu to agree with most of the things. And I can't get these idiots to agree. So it's like I'm stuck in this corner. I was like, somebody listen to me. I'm trying to get to the truth. It's extremely annoying. Now I want to touch on 2-3 more important points he raised. He said Hindutva people are very social media savvy. They're as savvy as probably the Congress supporters today.
I wouldn't call them savvy. I would call them active.
Yeah, they are active because they had no say in the mainstream media. So they found this platform. They went and started talking on this platform. Hello, nobody has stopped the Congress and AAP. And let me tell you now, when it comes to Twitter trends in India, Congress and AAP is equally good, and they have managed it very well. So I think he needs to update his thesis.
Yeah.
Now, the Hindu inheritance law and the laws in India, I think Hindu inheritance law recently was changed, and now Hindu women 50%
Yes, they do.
in the property. So I don't know why he mentioned such an obvious falsehood. I mean, that was, I thought, at least itna to jhoot nahi bolta tha wo. No, I agree there was a huge problem in Hindu inheritance laws in the past. I agree when he said that, when Hindu passed, the Hindu Code Bill was passed in the 1950s, a lot of Hindu, religious groups had opposed Nehru, and kudos to Nehru. Full marks to Nehru. Nehru said, fuck you all. I am passing this bill. You guys are savages. I will, civilize you. So I agree in that aspect. But to say inheritance laws for Muslim women are better than Hindu women in India, it's a load of bollocks. Now, at least, from what I know, anybody who's watching this live, please correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I did my research. I was like, nahi, abhi, and I remember alimony or ye sab mein to, I think alimony is a problem. I do realize, because if you get married in Hindu law, I still believe alimony is a huge problem, because they don't recognize it as such. But if you marry in the Special Marriage Act, though, the alimony is clear cut. I don't remember the Hindu Marriage Act ka alimony clause. But inheritance, I know it was fought. In fact, I think Madhukeshwar and Manushi had fought for this too, right?
I believe so. I don't know. I know Madhukeshwar was. I'm not sure about who Manushi is.
Manushi is the NGO of Madhukeshwar, right? Who fights.
Oh, okay. I thought there was another person. No. I knew about Madhukeshwar was doing it, but I didn't know what her NGO was called.
Yeah. So that was one point that I found very interesting. Another thing, he said, dude, don't worry. India, we will take up arms to protect our democracy.
I'll let you come in really quick. But I wanted to bring that up just when you were saying that the reason that there are not these lynching all across the country is because of this pacifism that Hindus have. Because it's not because of the law and order situation, because we see how bad it is. And I was going to mention it then, because he was saying that, we will take arms up against this Hindu fascism. And it's also not because of these so-called secularists that these lynchings are not happening, because these secularists are not there when these lynchings happen or anything like that. They're still sitting in their JNU, they're still sitting in their HuffPost offices and writing articles. So it's not because of them that these lynchings are not happening as well. So that needed to be made clear as well. But go ahead.
Yeah. So another thing that this worried me. He made a very sweeping statement that Indians carry these values abroad, and Hindutva is more poisonous because it has more potential to change. This was the most interesting one, because if Hindutva has such a potential to change, Hindu temples are under government control. No fucking Hindu can change it. Apparently, Hindutva is so strong. Hindus want their temples out, but they can't change one fucking policy in the Parliament of India, right? Hindutva is under such a control that the current Hindutva government has brought out the most draconian SC/ST Atrocities Act. They are such an upper caste chauvinistic government that to protect the upper castes, they have gotten out the most atrocious bill, which is called the SC/ST Atrocities Act, which is basically if any complaint is done, the first thing is you go to jail.
Yep.
Such an upper caste government. I tell you, BJP is such a fascist upper caste government. They really are protecting the Brahmins legally. I have
what I also loved that when he was talking about how the Hindu society is upper caste dominated, and this when he brought and he said that all of these great scholars are doing work to fight this Brahminism. All the scholars that he talked about that were fighting were all Brahmins. All the scholars that he said that, I love this scholar, this scholar, this scholar said this against, they're all Brahmins. So he didn't even he brought up the examples of Brahmins that were fighting Brahminism. So I really enjoyed that little anecdote as well.
Another very funny thing, we are so casteist. When you go for a job interview, people look at the caste. Now I want to talk about this. Jativad, especially, and I call this Bhai Bhatijavad. I mean, for the viewers who don't understand Hindi, I'm going to this is me, my family, and my extended family. So I'll support them. That is a very natural thing in India. It has nothing to do with caste. But I'm an entrepreneur. I have a few people working under me. I can assure you, I am part of major, large organizations, which are chambers of commerce. We have MSME industries associations. We have the small scale industries association. Like I have my factory in a particular area. It's called the Thana Velapur Industries Association. I've attended hundreds of meetings, not once, where thousands of entrepreneurs are there. Have we discussed, hey, what is your caste policy? Have you noticed? I want to find out the caste of the person I'm hiring. This is the biggest load of rubbish I've heard in my life. Now, I have never done a job. Nobody has asked me for my caste. I don't have any evidence, so I'll stay agnostic to it. But as someone who hires people in India and who has been doing this for the last 20 years, could there be companies who hire on the basis of caste? I'm not denying that. But to say that this is like this
a widespread pan-Indian phenomenon
thing in India, the biggest freaking problem is Indian governments want to bring reservations in private industries, and the only good thing that is working in India is the private sector, and they've been like, don't do it, don't ruin us. And okay, I don't know the caste demographic of anybody, but I can guarantee you, if you're a manufacturer in India, even if you hire 20 people in a small scale manufacturing unit in India, at least 50% of them or 60% of them will be lower caste people. I'm guaranteeing you that. I don't know what have you done a job in India, Sham? So I've not done a job. So I
have. I worked in India for a couple of weeks, for a couple of years, but seemed like a couple of weeks. But yeah, I had people from. I was working for an agribusiness company, and I had people from all sorts of castes. I had a very good friend who was a Baniya, and there's other people that were in the sales team that were from castes that I wasn't sure which exactly caste it was, but I don't think they were Brahmins. So, and it's not something that at least me or the people that I was working with, it was not something that when we met them that we tried to find out even. I don't know what caste that last name is, but I wasn't like anxious to know. Tell me, what's your caste? I don't know what that caste is, and nobody in my company was interested in it. And this was in bloody Patna, which is supposed to be part of one of the most backward states in the country. So I'm not saying that casteism doesn't exist in Patna or in Bihar, or Jativad doesn't exist in Bihar. In fact, it exists more than everywhere else in India, I would say. But in terms of hiring people, in terms of working with people, it, for me at least, in my experience, it did not seem to be a consideration.
But would it be fair to say that we are willing to concede that there must be some element of casteism in hiring in India? I think that's a fair.
100%. I think people when they're hiring in their own companies, if you're a small business owner and if you want to hire a certain kind of person in your company, I'm completely open that that's probably a possibility. There's probably a possibility that he's like, I want to only hire people from this community. I want to only hire Bhumihars, or I want to only hire Kayasts. I want to only hire Yadavs. That's a possibility.
So I found that to be very interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now let's.
He also said, if I can just bring in one more, he also said that when he was talking, that he said that Hindus are particularly brutal towards Christians when Hindus face absolutely no threat from Christianity in India. And that there's very, very tiny pockets of Christian population, particularly in the south. There's very tiny pockets of population, and all they're trying to do is just live their lives, and these Hindutvavadis are threatening their lives and bullying them and stuff like that. So this is again something that needs to be debunked, because there is a threat. I'm willing to concede that maybe it is not a major threat today. I'm willing to concede that. But I'm not willing to concede that there isn't a threat. If you just look at FCRA numbers, if you just look at the kind of money that comes into India for proselytization purposes, if you just look at the kind of money that comes into these churches and the way these church organizations and these missionary organizations spend money, the way they convert people, there is a threat. I maybe there isn't a epoch changing threat right now, but there is certainly a threat. 50 out of the 15 biggest donors or the 15 biggest NGOs working in India, 13 are Christian evangelical missionary organizations. Out of the three top organizations that get money that send money to India from overseas are Christian evangelical organizations. What do you think they're sending money to India for? Do you think they're sending money to India to build schools and teach people Veda and yoga? No, they have a very clear purpose behind why that money is coming to India. So to say that, oh, there's absolutely no threat, this is something that the bloody Hindutvavadis are imagining, and they're lying about it, and they're bullying the Christians about it, again, that is a complete lie. And to people, especially hearing that podcast in the West, they're going to hear it and they're going to say, okay, maybe I'm not a practicing Christian, maybe I'm just a nominal Christian, but for me to hear what is happening to Christians in India is horrible. When I hear Zubin say these things, and I'm just a Christian by name even, and I'm hearing these things and I feel horrible, and I feel a certain way towards Hindus when I hear those things.
Yeah, and the funniest thing, I found this to be the funniest aspect of the podcast because it involved my favorite leader, Prakash Javadekar. Javadekar for PM, hashtag Javadekar for PM.
Hashtag Javadekar for PM.
So he says the government is changing texts and changing the history. People will not know the real history of India. Interesting. A few days ago, Javadekar on an open platform said, we have not changed any textbook for the last
a single chapter. Yeah, we have not changed.
Has not been changed. So the best part was, here was the Hindutva crowd accusing Javadekar, you don't do anything, you have not changed anything, and we have a hilarious hashtag Javadekar for PM. Some of us make fun of Javadekar day in and day out, where there are memes about Prakash Javadekar.
Yeah.
And this guy says, oh, they're changing text. What the hell have they changed? 8th standard kids still learn the same rubbish.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing, the amnesia this guy, and the comfort with which he was saying all of these things are happening. And the problem is, this is where, because Ali and Armin, they don't know anything about it.
They don't know, yeah.
So whatever that guy is going to say, they'll be like, really? Is this happening? That is so bad. And it bothers me. And I was like, come on, dude, push back. Now, two things. I'm going to connect both of them. So he was asked about Mother Teresa. He's like, man, Christopher Hitchens did such a good job on Mother Teresa. But, these right-wing guys, they hijacked it. So now we can't criticize Mother Teresa. Yeah, if you remember, that was his insinuation. Second, funny enough, he does not know that guy from Bengal who wrote the biggest book on Mother Teresa and the fraud she is.
That doctor, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't know him. So much for that. He only knows the bloody documentary Christoph Hitchens has done. He does not go know the guy from Bengal. He's probably done the best work on Mother Teresa living in India. He was in
Yep.
Bengal and he got so much shit for that. The poor guy. Now, another thing which was interesting is while they were discussing the civil laws in India, he says, yeah, uniform civil code, it sounds very noble and very nice. But here's the problem. The Hindutva guys support it. Just because the Hindutva guys support a uniform civil code, it should not be brought into India. Guess what? Zubin, Hindutva guys believe in gravity. Hindutva guys believe that the earth is not flat.
Yeah.
I think we should start teaching creationism in school because the Hindutva guys, most of them also, other than the idiot who is the MOD for the HRD right now, who says evolution is not true, most Hindutva people say evolution is true.
Yeah.
I guess we should flip and agree with the minister. We should stop teaching evolution in India. Wow, what do you say, Sham? I think
It's like saying, like I said to you before we went live as well, it's like saying if the Nazis have said that they believe in universal education, then are you going to slap the book out of your child's hand? Is that what you're going to do? Are you going to say, no, you're not allowed to read anymore because Nazis said that education is a good thing? It's the same thing. I'm not saying, look, before everybody gets triggered, I'm not saying Hindutvawadis are Nazis, but I'm just saying, I'm trying to give an analogy that if somebody that you think bad said something good, that doesn't make the good thing bad. The good thing is still going to stay good. So that's this weird cognitive dissonance. Like if like a white supremacist says that we need to develop the space program more, that doesn't make the space program bad. The white supremacist is the only one that's bad here. The space program is still a bloody good idea. So it's a strange one, yeah. And the Uniform Civil Code, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about and explain to people what the Uniform Civil Code basically is, so people can maybe get an idea of it.
well, it was,
Why do liberals at the moment, or at least him, why he hates it so much?
yeah, so it's very interesting. In India, obviously, as we know, when India became independent from the British, so what we tried to do was, if we look at the directive principles are not an active part of the constitution. They could be called something like a vision. We eventually want to head there. This is our ultimate road. The directive principles also had cows, avoiding cow slaughter, and the directive principles had, we want a uniform civil code. So basically, every community in India, irrespective of their cultural, religious, caste identity, will be covered under the same civic law. Now, it could not be executed, obviously, for the reasons which are Muslims would riot. I will say this openly. That was the reason it did not happen.
It's true.
So everyone was given their own community rules. Interesting. Hindus were reformed. Hindu civil code was updated, right? Hindus agitated, but the government said, fuck you.
Yeah.
Hindus were like, okay.
Okay. Fuck me.
Yeah. So Hindus, okay. The Christians also have their own law. The Parsis have the law. Now the Muslims are allowed to marry 4 women. Now, Hindutva Brigade says, hey, we should all have some laws, the same laws. Now, let us treat every, one equally. Now, the left wing in India does not like that. Now, why don't we talk about the Shah Bano judgment? He brought about the Babri Masjid.
Yes.
We want to talk about Shah Bano. So, Shah Bano was this Muslim woman in 1986 who basically her husband divorced her using the great, female empowering use of triple talaq. So he gave her a divorce, refused to give her any maintenance. So she went to the Supreme Court of India. Good on the Supreme Court. They ruled it in her favor and said, listen, dude, you have to give her maintenance. Guess what did the great Prime Minister of the Congress Party, Rajiv Gandhi, did? He legislatively brought in an amendment saying that no, prevention of minorities, you cannot interfere in minority work. And he made it a legislation and Muslim women were stuck for life. Guess what? The bigoted Hindu
fascist government
brought in a legislation and removed triple talaq after the court order. Obviously, they want Muslim women to suffer, right? They hate Muslims so much that they want to liberate Muslim women in India. But
How horrible.
Sham, what kind of a bigot are you? Why are you against triple talaq? You should support it.
That's horrible. That's horrible. Anybody that thinks that Muslim women should have a voice and individuality, I can't even believe that a person like that exists. I
Yeah.
can't even believe that. That's horrible.
Shocking. I mean, Muslim
Yeah.
women get divorced by Skype. They get divorced on WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
Yeah, they get
Yeah.
divorced by telegrams in India. We should support these
I,
things,
I
right?
I saw this meme somewhere where apparently this guy took his wife to like a hill station, and they stood out at the edge of the cliff, and he shouted talak, and the echo said talak talak, and he said done, I'm getting out of here. And he just like ran away.
And yeah, you can only do this, and then this guy has the gall to say,
Uh,
because Hindutva supports it, and this is what I call dehumanizing an entire support group.
yes.
Imagine if these guys tomorrow have guns in their hands and they have unabashed power. What will they do to the Hindutva people?
Yep.
They will kill them. They are
Exactly they will.
fascists. I say
Exactly they will.
full responsibility. Not all left wingers. I have a lot of friends who are left wingers. I love them. They're reasonable people. But anybody who peddles bullshit like this, that I will not support the uniform civil code because my political opponent supports it, you are a liar. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. You are a threat to democracy, not people like me. People like you are a threat to democracy in India. I get scared
It
of
sounds very similar to that whole, USSR Chinese perspective that if you do not believe this particular narrative, then you're an enemy of the state. And as an enemy of the state, you are liable to be put down as an enemy of the state. And when you're talking about these so-called Hindutvawadis, you're painting these people clearly because they want a uniform civil code. You're painting these people as enemy of the state. So, like you said, if these people ever get power, what do you think they will do to these perceived enemy of the state? We have two very good examples already and numerous examples in Latin America of what happens to the enemies of the state. So that's something we need to remember. You forget your history, you're going to repeat your history.
Yeah. Now I want to take the last question, because this was the only moment in that entire podcast where someone like Armin, who's a genuinely curious guy, and I love him. He's funny as hell. I love his Twitter avatar, especially Armin. I love it. I don't care, Armin. You can bash Hinduism all the time. You can say it's bullshit. It doesn't offend me. Even I believe a lot of it is bullshit. So, Armin, we are in the same camp in that sense. And by the way, Sham is a Astika Hindu. Armin, he has no problem. Sham, right? If he says Hinduism is bullshit, you got no issues, right?
I don't care. It's not going to affect my life.
Yeah. So fair enough. Now, Armin asked a very important questions to the great scholar of Hinduism, Mr. Zubin, that what is the core of Hinduism? Very interesting, right? Very valid question. But is it really valid? Because this is where I differentiate dharmic skepticism and Abrahamic atheism. Because Abrahamic religions, they have this thing called the core. These are my core beliefs. Hinduism, the word Hinduism, this is how I understand it. Hinduism is a blanket word which it is a larger open architecture or an open code software which has different apps on it. It's like an Android phone. Hinduism is the Android phone, and there are different apps on it. So one app could be Cārvāka, that is me. One app could be yoga, that is someone else. One app could be Advaita Vedanta, which is you, right? One app could be Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa. One could be Purva Mimamsa. One could be Sankhya. One could be Jain. One could be Buddha. One could be Sikh. One could be Muslim. One could be Christian. Different apps on that Android phone of Hinduism have different cores. Now you might ask, what is the damn thing that ties all these people? Now I have to exclude the Muslims and the Christians in this because there are just irreconcilable theological differences.
Yes.
But the rest of the Hindus, they are tied by one thing, which was beautifully put by Rajiv Malhotra, which is mutual respect and reciprocity, where we are okay with disagreement. And to quote Aurobindo, unity does not mean uniformity. So the core of individual Hindu darshanas, which is individual Hindu groups or sects, are different. So the core for Sankhya would be different than the core of a Cārvāka. Now, yes, there are more Hindu darshanas that agree that reincarnation is a fact, but that does not mean that that is the universal core of Hinduism. Hinduism is different. It is a bottom up thing. It is not a top down thing. It is
Mm.
not a place where God comes, says, "Hey, here's my prophet. Come here, you human.
Mm.
Angel, you go there. Gabriel, go and talk to them, give him my message, and then I'll come and say." There is no unique revelation in Hinduism. You can
Yep.
seek the truth through different methods yourself, or you can say, just like I do, that whatever you guys are saying is buga buga, and I'm
Mm.
still Hindu. You got a problem with that? Well, too bad.
Mm.
That's not my problem. Go fucking find your own religion. It's not my problem. If Hindus don't have a problem with me, I'm not going to go and create a problem for them. So sorry, it's bullshit. Now you can go ahead, Sham.
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. That's essentially what I would say. That there isn't this conflict. There isn't this manufactured conflict with Abrahamic religions. There's this manufactured conflict that it's my way or the highway. If you don't believe exactly what I say, then either you have to go away or you have to die. In India, that's not the case. In India, under our sort of Hindu identity, that is not the case. People can. That is why people that have even necessarily sort of strayed from the core concepts and that have not talked about these core concepts, even those people are celebrated. People in India, dissent is celebrated. I would say to even to that extent that in India, dissent is not just tolerated, but in certain cases, dissent is celebrated. That is why people that have dissented against the sort of more orthodox aspects, if you want to call that, of Hindu practice, people like that have become saints. People like that are celebrated throughout India. How many people in India have a Buddha statue in their house? Everybody, most of the sort of urban people, even if they're practicing Hindus, they'll have a Buddha statue in their house. Yeah, see, that doesn't make me some kind of a traitor to Hinduism. In fact, I consider him part of the whole, part of my culture, part of my Hindu culture. I consider him to be a person that enriched it with his descent. So for me, this is not a mode of conflict, and this is something that I feel like Abrahamic atheists, because they've grown up and that is the only system they know, it is a difficult thing for them to wrap their heads around. Because I say, if I don't think exactly the way you think, then that means I have to burn the entire ecosystem. No, that's not the way it works in India. We can adjust and we can still accept you. We can still have a conversation. We can still hang out. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
And you know why I'm showing this Buddha? I have a lot of disagreements with this guy too, by the way.
Yeah,
Lot
exactly.
I don't agree with him. But guess what? I have his statue in my room because I have a lot of respect for this guy. Tremendous respect. Krishna, I love Krishna's concept of nishkam karma. I
Hmm.
find it so fascinating that karma kar phal pe tera adhikar nahi hai. That concept is very deep. In fact,
Yeah.
I take it as a moral lesson myself. When I live my life, do I believe in karma as in there is something that is passed on? No, I don't. But you can take a lot of philosophy from India, and it's a nice philosophy that we can learn. Uh, does that mean nothing good was taught in the left wing or in the Western world? Absolutely not. I
Yeah.
love Greek philosophy too. I mean, Parmenides, Plato, Aristotle, or all these guys. The pre-Socratics and Socrates and scholars after Socrates. There were a lot of interesting things they taught too. I would love to read all of them and learn from everyone. But that's the thing. Hinduism is not a rigid structure. Now look at this discussion today, because now I'm going to take a few questions from others, because yes, finally we covered all the notes.
Yeah.
Podcast. It took us an hour and 45 minutes, but we did it. But why we did it? Look at what happened today. We started with Sham and I bashing Hinduism ourselves. Sham is a practicing Astika Hindu. He
Well,
meditates.
not practicing, but I definitely do meditate. Yeah.
That's practicing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't have to mean that you do some kind of ritual in a temple.
Yeah.
So there you go. I am a Nastika Hindu and I meditate. Both of us meditate, but one is a Astika, one is a Nastika. So this is how our society is. We have a lot of problems. we have a lot of good things. And what happened in that podcast of Armin Nawabi and Ali Rizvi, to use Armin's words, because Armin uses it a lot of time. It's bullshit. That's all it
Yeah.
was. So
One
now,
last
if
point
you
I
have any
wanted to
questions,
make
while
before
Sham
you.
makes the comments, Sham, you can make some comments. So
Okay.
one thing, guys, you can have any questions, just start typing them now.
Yeah. So one last thing I quickly want to make is they were talking about he described Modi basically as a dictator. And he said that Modi is a dictator and he has a lot of similarities with these far right dictators that are coming around in countries, because I don't know if he made the example of Turkey, but he definitely hinted at that, where he said that governments in these countries are coming in on this anti-corruption platform. So all these far right dictatorial governments are coming in into countries on this platform of anti-corruption. Guess what, man? The good governments are coming in on the platform of anti-corruption as well. That is a big problem in these countries. In these so-called developing countries, corruption is a huge problem. Whether you're a far right dictatorial government or whether you're a left-wing communist government, you're coming into power on the campaign of anti-corruption. So to say that, to build this dishonest kind of connection that, oh, because Erdogan came to power on anti-corruption, that means Modi is Erdogan. It's stupid, it's disingenuous, and you're lying.
Yeah, so now we're going to start taking questions. So first question was, when did the term Hindu came into existence? Now that's a very good question. If you ask me, I don't think so. The term Hindu is mentioned before the Zend Avesta. I could be wrong, but if I remember, it basically is they could not say sir, so Sapta Sindhava basically becomes Hapta Hindu, and that's where the term comes. Sham, do you know any?
From my recollection, it is also, I think, from my recollection, and again, I might be wrong because I don't know too much about it, but it is a term given to us by the Iranians, right?
Yeah, so that's it. Now somebody asked me, how do we force BJP to be
So
more
thanks,
fiscally
Armin,
right
for
wing?
that.
Please take that, Sham.
What was the question? Sorry.
How do we make BJP more fiscally right wing? I am not going there. You can take that.
I don't know, man. I almost feel like in a country like India, like Kushal was saying earlier, right, that there's not a strong right wing structure in India to begin with. So to make us fiscally right wing, at least in this atmosphere, is going to be a hard job, because people can say what they want, but in India there's still a very large uh, poor population that needs to be brought out of poverty and into at least a place where they're able to earn a decent subsistent living. So for that, for a country with a population like that, these socialist programs are still the programs that are going to get you the votes. The big votes and the big programs are still going to be these socialist programs, at least in the near future. So for that case, BJP, as much as they're going to talk about right wing economic policies and right wing this and right wing that, for the foreseeable future, I think for the near future at the very least, you're still going to see a lot of these socialist programs that you've seen in the past 4 years. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon radically.
Okay. Now somebody had asked, have I invited Armin on a podcast? Yes, I have, and Armin will come. Listen, guys, I am not shitting on Armin and Ali Amjad Rizvi. I like them. In
Or
fact,
maybe on Ali a little bit.
maybe on Ali a little bit. I won't say I'm shitting on Ali. Honestly, I'm disappointed with Ali because I really have a soft corner for Ali, because I thought, this guy is from our culture. He may
Yeah.
understand our culture better than Armin, and his questions made no sense. In fact, in my view, Armin asked far more pointed questions. And
100%.
yeah,
100%.
so if anything, but I'm very clear. I like Ali Amjad Rizvi. I actually like him. But my point is, if you don't know something about the subject, don't pretend.
Yeah.
Just say, I don't know. I don't
If
know
anything,
about
just a quick word. Before you finish, I want to just add a quick word as well, that about Armin, I was genuinely, heartened to see that this was a guy. He was not out there to have a shit session, like to shit on people. Maybe he was looking to find ways to shit on Hinduism, but he was genuinely looking. That's the operative word here. He was looking, whereas the other two, they weren't looking.
Yeah, that was a problem. A lot of people have asked me questions on Sati. Guys, okay, if this is where you want to go, I will go. So I'm on page 4 of this book. So I'm just going to randomly give you sources where Sati is mentioned. So she starts with Mahabharata. She says the Mahabharata contained some references to Sati. Yes, Mahabharata did. The case of Madri, the younger wife of King Pandu, immolated herself on the pyre. And then she also mentions the Vyasa Smriti, Parshahara Smriti, and Brihaspati Smriti extolled the Sati, but Brihaspati also proclaimed the rights of widows. So there you go. In the same book, there are rights of widows and there is Sati. Figure out Hinduism for yourself. There are some incidents of widow immolation which are.
Can I ask a question as well? It's related to this.
Uh,
Is there a place where sati becomes like forced, like a woman doesn't want to do it, but she's made to do it? Is there a point of time where that happens?
I'll tell you, it's very interesting. So how Sati is presented in some religious scriptures according to the book is actually quite psychotic. Sati conceptually is a very psychotic concept. So basically how it comes off is that if the female is willingly immolating herself, she's attaining some great act. So it's like you have bought into the bloody patriarchal concept that the man is this thing, and at the divine level you're going to be one with the man. And in many cases, I remember, I think it is from this book, women are fighting, like, if the Raja has multiple wives, they are fighting who's going to immolate herself. I mean, what the fuck, man? You're fighting about who's going to kill herself. I mean,
it's kind of like people fighting to wear the burqa right now. So let me wear it. It's empowering to me. Let me wear it.
Yeah, but see what I loved about this book is nowhere does Meenakshi Jain deny Sati as a problem. She's very categorical. She goes through methodological, very methodically. She will cite the verse, she'll cite the Smriti. Highly recommend this book, guys. It's very hard for me to remember and start picking pages and give you answers. But if you want to get the most comprehensive understanding of Sati, whether it's from the Christian missionary angle and every single angle, you have to read this book. So I'm going to give you a nutshell. Yes, Sati existed.
Yes.
But it was not very widespread because Hinduism has no core in itself, right? So there might be, let's say, a village. That village might be practicing Sati, but 5 villages down the line, they may not be practicing Sati. And I'll tell you why this is so complicated. If we remember the Arthashastra. Now, Arthashastra is not a religious text. It's a foreign policy text. But Arthashastra has maintenance after remarriage. Arthashastra talks about widow remarriage. If Sati was so widespread in India, now Arthashastra is what? Even if we look at the Western sources, it is minimum 300 BCE or 365 BCE. I mean, we claim, our Hindu scholars claim it's 500 BCE or 600. I don't remember the dates, so please don't quote me on that. But why is Arthashastra talking about widow remarriage then? You have to ask yourself these questions when you study something academically. If it was such a widespread practice, then the question of widow remarriage does not come. The question of maintenance after the death of the husband does not come. But the Smriti texts, they do talk about it. They touch these issues on, and it's not a passing reference. There are chapters on it. So it's a very complicated issue. Does Sati exist? Yes. Is Sati garbage? Yes. It should go, and it's not here. And I think in independent India, there were 40 recorded cases of Sati. That's what I remember.
And how many today?
None.
So this is a problem that India actually, I would like to say, and I think this is true, that without outside help, this was a problem that India was able to resolve. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, kind of. See, could you repeat that question, because you kind of
necessarily without outside help, this was an issue that India was able to resolve.
Look, hypothetically, I think Indians would have been capable enough to resolve that issue without the help of the Britishers too, because now the problem is we can't create a scenario today. I mean, we have gotten rid of the banning of the gay sex law without the British too, right? So if we can get rid of 377 as a society, why can't we get rid of Sati as a society too? I mean, we've gotten rid of a lot of things as a society, right? That's why I believe we'll get rid of the blasphemy law too as a society.
Yeah.
Very positive about it.
I think so, because if you look at the Article 377 is an important one, because there was resistance to this from within the Hindu community, that why are you removing Article 377? Why are you doing all of this stuff? But at the end of the day, this fascist, horrible government was the one that actually got it done over the line. And there was support. There was massive support from within the Hindu community for its removal as well. So again, when you're creating this scenario where you're talking to people and you're broadcasting to people who don't necessarily know a lot about India and Hindus, and you're painting it with this wide brush, that all of these they're all Hindutvawadis, and everybody who voted for Modi, just the same way, like everybody that voted for Trump has to be a racist, and everybody that voted for Modi has to be genocidal.
Hmm. No, someone has asked a question that can you give some book recommendations? So I'll do one thing. I'll give you some recommendations. I'm just going to randomly look at my library. So,
Dude, can I give you one quick one?
Yeah.
I know BJP is fascist, but go to the BJP's e-library. Free, hundreds and hundreds of free books by folks like Sitaram Goyal, folks like Ram Swarup, good scholars, not BJP MPs writing books, good, authentic Indian scholars. Go free, all you can download for free. I've been reading these books like for the past like 2 or 3 weeks. So great resource, hundreds of books. Go check them out.
Yeah, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to recommend some of the books which Sham has not mentioned. So this is one, like I said, Sati by Meenakshi Jain. Now I'm not going to take out all the books, but you can read one book called Castes of Mind. This is by a left-wing scholar, by the way. I think he's American. Dirks, Dirks. I repeat the name of the book, Castes of Mind. His full name is, I think, Nicholas Dirks. Then if you want to read about dowry and the whole book, highly recommend one book called Dowry Murder by Veena Talwar Oldenburg. It's a must-read book on dowry and problems in India and other things. If you want to understand some core differences, not in India and the West, not necessarily India and the West, but Asia, like the East and the West, like the Japanese, Chinese thought process, I will recommend one book called The Geography of Thought. I forgot the author's name. Let me read. It's Richard E. Nisbet. Now, these are very good books. You will understand where we come from and where when I say we, I mean the larger Asian culture, although Indian culture is slightly different than the Japanese culture. Let me look at some more books.
One I could probably recommend is like by name, is the Raj Yog by Vivekananda. I found that book to be very interesting. There's some stuff that you'll read in there that might come off to you as a little booga booga, but I think that book gives a very interesting distinction, the explanation of the distinction between Abrahamic cultures and what Indian culture is. And so I would recommend check out the Raj Yog by Vivekananda.
Yeah, another book I'm going to recommend is if you want to deconstruct yourself or deconstruct this is a very important book. I don't agree with a lot of things Professor Bal Gangadhara says himself, but read Reconceptualization of India Studies by Bal Gangadhara, or it was originally called The Heathen in His Blindness. Brilliant book if you want to understand studies on India within the Western academia. And I think Vishwa Adluri has also written very good books on Mahabharata and the two books he has written. I forgot the first name of Vishwa Adluri's book, so just look up his book. That is also a very good book. Vishwa Adluri is a very respected academic. Now I'm just gonna look. Give me a couple of minutes. Another good book I would recommend is Conrad Ell's Decolonizing the Hindu Mind. I think that was another interesting book. That was something. Now let me look at another question. Somebody has said, let me see, where is it? What is wrong with the meaning of the word Hind? I don't know, man. What is wrong with the meaning of the word Hind? So I can't answer that. Okay, yeah. Don't you think in Zubin trivializes and makes insensitive remarks by exaggerating? So what happens is the real victims suffer. I don't know. I don't know what would be the possible repercussions of Zubin's comments. I really don't know. My biggest worry is when people, luckily this podcast is not being watched by a lot of people. Eventually it will be when they make it free for the people. My worry is multiple. My worry is that people who are in the West might carry some images about Hindus now. A lot of Hindus work in the Gulf too, and especially Armin and Ali's podcast is watched by a lot of Muslims in the Arab world. A lot of Indians work in the Arab world. And if they start talking about these things about Hindus, it can carry negative connotations. That's my only worry. But if does that mean Zubin should not say it? No, no. I'm an absolutist when it comes on free speech. Zubin can say every single Hindu is an asshole, and I would support his right to say
As
that.
long as Zubin is not calling for Hindus to be murdered in the streets, Zubin can say whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah. So okay, very interesting question, Sham. I really like this question. Why are the problems of India regarded as the problems of Hinduism? Take it.
That's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, because I think it's the way people frame it. It's when most people, when they talk about the problems of India, they are actually referring to the problems with Hinduism, because that's how most people frame the question. When they say, oh, this is the problem with India, caste system. This is the problem with India, Sati. This is the problem with India, discrimination against Hindus and Muslims. So when you're framing that question, you're saying this is the problem with Hindu society. If you frame questions saying this is the problem in India and you discuss Christian issues, Muslim issues, Hindu issues, then it truly becomes a problem with India. So it totally depends on how you frame the question.
Yeah. So now, where was that question, man? Okay, somebody asked, "What is my take on Raja Ram Mohan Roy?" Hmm. Uh, I mean, some of the things he said made sense. Some of the things
Yeah.
did not make sense. I mean, what is my take on Gandhi? I agree on some things that Gandhi said. Do I dislike Raja Ram Mohan Roy? If that's what you're trying to say, no, I don't dislike Raja Ram Mohan Roy. I'm being very honest here. I
Mm.
don't dislike Raja Ram Mohan Roy, but maybe I don't have agreements with him. Another question was, when does the caste system actually become deteriorated and untouchability gets born? Look, untouchability, I think, is a universal phenomena. Every religion
Mm.
or every society has this weird obsession with purity. So even if you look at the old British times, they also had untouchability. Especially people who worked in manual scavenging was a real problem. So it
Mm.
creates, it create disgust mechanisms do get triggered in the brain. It stems from that, and then every society practices it. I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, 2000 years ago, I think caste became very rigid in India. That, at least that's what the genetic evidence is. So I think that clears that question. um Somebody has said, where did that go, man? Oh. Okay, what are your views on Sabrimala and the TRP hunters? I don't know what TRP hunters.
The TRP hunter. Are they talking about news channels? Because that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
A Sabrimala issue, I think it has the potential to be a watershed moment. Potential. The reason I say potential is because I'm hoping that Hindus can finally realize that by fighting issues the way Sabrimala was fought is how big battles are going to be won in the future. Big battles are probably not going to be won by screaming and shouting on social media, which again is a very important part of the battle. Don't get me wrong at all. I'm not discrediting it. I'm saying it's a very important part of the battle, but I'm saying that the way Sabrimala was fought, the Battle of Sabrimala was fought, is the way I think future battles are going to be fought and won, by actually taking the fight where it matters, taking it to the legal areas, taking it to local politicians and stuff like that. So I think it has the potential to be a watershed moment for the way Hindus fight battles and Hindus fight for Hindu causes. And I just hope that we don't relinquish this.
Okay. So I'm going to close with my comments on the Sabrimala issue, because I think it's important people know where I stand, because I just keep poking fun at things on Twitter. That's all where I stand. I read the Supreme Court submission by the people for Dharma in this case, which they lost. Now there has been this, this thing being peddled uh, all over social media and the mainstream media, that they don't allow women inside the temple because there is some impurity issue. Now, this is my first answer. If it is an impurity issue, I do not support it. I believe the courts have done the right thing. Now, let us look at the submissions of the people for Dharma. It is a 121 page submission. You can just Google Supreme Court submission Jai Sai Deepak Sabrimala and it will pop up. It's a PDF file, 120 pages. Don't be so lazy. You can go and read it themselves. And if you are lazy, just start reading from page number 18 to I think it was page number 35. This is where they deal with this specific problem of impurity. Nowhere in the entire Supreme Court submission have they used this word that women are impure. In fact, they are trying to dispel this thing that we believe this. What has happened is in India, we have this weird issue about women are impure, menstruating women are impure. That is the issue. If you notice, especially in northern India, a lot of women are not allowed in the Gharka temple also when they are on their period. So that is what has happened is that typical problem in India has been extrapolated and
onto Sabrimala.
basically put on Sabrimala. Now, Sabrimala story is different. What they say is it's a Naistika Brahmachari, and the Naistika Brahmachari basically likes to stay a celibate. And the Naistika Brahmachari, according to the rules of Tantra, there are some energies, and those energies are disturbed. And the women, if they are menstruating, they come in, and yeah, you can laugh on their beliefs. But then you can laugh on the belief in the deity itself. Now, the courts cannot get into something on the basis of rationality, because if you start getting into things on the basis of rationality, that's a slippery slope. Then why allow a belief in a God, I would say? That's a very dangerous argument. So my reason is that if they are saying, and I check their sources, they are accurate, they use Tantra and they use the Smritis also, that they are claiming this is based on the story of the Naistika Brahmachari. Fair enough. Then they should be allowed. The courts are wrong. In my view, the courts are wrong on this specific case. It cannot be compared with the Haji Ali case.
Because there are other Ayappa temples where women are allowed. But that's important to point out as well.
Yeah, there are Ayappa temples all over India where women are allowed because the deity is not a Naistika Brahmachari.
Yes.
That's the whole concept. So, and one criticism of the whole movement, you did not go out and teach people the story of a Naistika Brahmachari. So if there was any fair criticism that I can lay on the entire movement, is this: you did not sell your story, now suffer. Now you have not convinced the other side about your story. That's your problem.
What would you say though? What would you say apart from that? Is there a lesson to be learned or did you see any positives in the way I think the fight for Sabrimala was approached? Do you see any positives in it?
Well, the positives are, for the first time, Hindus have learned how to go to courts.
Yes. Yep.
So finally, some Hindus have realized, boss, we are a democracy. Democracy is a good thing. Let's go to courts. I know finally political outfits in India, other than the Congress, have started investing on judges. They have learned the American way. They
Yep.
judges now. Baki, people will get समझदार को इशारा काफी है. So that's happened. Now somebody had asked me a follow-up on Sabrimala. Don't you think Hindus erred? Shouldn't they have allowed everyone and just devotees choosing not to go? Yeah, case can be made. I think right now that could be made. But then, I could say the Tantri of the temple can just say, we are only making stories, right? So new story, God is sleeping. Shut. These are hypothetical, but I don't like the idea of some of the supporters being violent today that the news came. I know the police was doing lathi charge, but look, if you are devotees, behave like them. There were some on and off cases about that. I think that what happens, the media will use one case of someone, the journalist, and they will blow it out to proportion. You should have been particularly careful. But hey, what do you?
Yeah, I don't know enough about that situation to talk about it.
So somebody said do a podcast on Sabrimala issue with people. Guys, I've done 2 podcasts already. Anjali was on my podcast. Sai Deepak is on my podcast. Somebody had said I should call. I don't know. The Twitter handle is some @Lotus something. I'll contact her. I'm going to invite her on the podcast too, and I'll re-invite Sai Deepak. Sai and I have spoken. We're going to talk about it. So give me some time. We're just figuring out the date. So I try to get all of them together, probably Anjali, Sai, and all of them together. We can talk about it. So on that note, I want to make some closing statements. I rarely respond to videos. I felt I had to respond to this particular video because I was, again, the right word I'm using is I was disappointed. because I expect more from Ali Rizvi and Armin Nawabi, especially Ali Rizvi, because he's an Indian Pakistani.
Yeah.
Know their culture. I was disappointed, and that's why I had to respond. I apologize if I have inadvertently hurt somebody's feelings today. It's not my intention. I want to have civil dialogue, but and once again, I'm sorry if somebody is going to be hurt by this. But I had to do this because the person in me would not allow me to sleep properly. Like, they just get away with this rubbish that was peddled that day. And once again, Sham, thanks a lot for coming. As usual, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
No, thank you for having me. And it was interesting, and I'm happy that you invited me as well, because if not for you, I would have never known about it, because it was this Patreon thing that was only available to patrons, and I wouldn't have a clue about it. So I'm actually happy that I got to know about this, because I feel that at some point in the future, this is going to become public. This podcast, at some point in the future, will probably become public. And when it does, there's going to be this massive spread of misinformation on a platform as large as Atheist Republic, and with people who have the best of intentions in their hearts, but just do not have the kind of knowledge. They just don't know enough about India. So for those kind of people, especially, who have the good intentions, and if you feed them this kind of misinformation, it's really sad. So I'm happy we were able to do this. I don't know how much of an impact our podcast is going to have, but even if one person who listened to both the podcasts, who listens to our podcast and then just goes, "Oh, I didn't know that," that's mission accomplished.
Yeah, so I think I could not have ended it in a better way. So once again, thanks a lot for watching this, and I'm gonna put the audio link after a while. I'll put this as an audio podcast tomorrow. So once again, thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Namaskar. Take care.
Thank you.